It's basically, there's several strands to the work that I do. The main one is the fact that I tend to use or look at imagery from 18th and 19th century women who use things like herbariums and watercolours and embroidery, and actually embrace what was at that time considered a feminine leisure activity. So I want to embrace their creativity and celebrate their beauty. And the point is to dematerialise the drawings or the prints that relate to a skeletal structure just as a suggestion to botanical specimens, to reinforce knowledge, forgotten artists whose images are lasting example of plants and flowers invariably now extinct. And I tend to not just use one process. So these are etchings, not on the plate edge, so I've knocked the plate edge off. And they've got collage of hand-printed letterpress full stops and punctuation marks, which I've then collaged onto each image. That idea being, it's a bit like sewing on a sequin, it's a bit like a hand stitch. So it takes a very long time. So very slow, it's a very understated piece. And I also tend to respond to a place and a space. So I was very, very fortunate to spend time on residency at the Joseph and Annie Albers Foundation, and these grasses were drawn from there. So there's several strands of things going on, and I like to collaborate with artists, and it's interesting actually because it's a true collaboration in a sense that I don't respond to a poem, and Fritz has not responded in a sense to the grasses that I've drawn. We had lots of conversations and sort of knew what we wanted to do, and I'm actually going to go over to Fritz at this point to see if he would like to say anything. If not,
sure, happy to. Well, it's a great honor to get to work with Mandy. I've known Mandy's work for about 10 years. When she came to the Albers Foundation for the first of 2 residencies that she's done, I work at the Albers Foundation. I'm also an artist and a writer. And when she and I started talking about, well, I guess we've actually collaborated before, haven't we?
We have, yeah. On a moss box.
Exactly. Previous poem I wrote about moss. And when the idea of grasses came up, we started sort of throwing ideas back and forth. And we both pay attention to things like grass a lot, and we realized that we'd both been looking at the grasses on the property of the Albers Foundation, and we thought, well, let's focus on that. So I focused in my way, and she focused in hers, and we came together.
And that was a lovely, looking at the sort of Victorian women artists as the most amazing woman. I think, I can't remember her name exactly, but I think it's Miss Wickham. And she did a grass book that was in an exhibition at the Yale Centre for British Art, which was so beautiful, these grasses that she had done. And in a sense, it's an acknowledgement to the beauty of what she had done with collecting these grasses and these herbariums. So it's just like a response and a conversation between the past and the present.
And it was watercolors that she had done?
No, she didn't. Well, some of them were, I think, but most of them was actually just a herbarium. But the way that she put it together and the way that it was on this blue paper, these were long and thin. And the other thing, actually, being at the Albers Foundation, is that they've got, which I don't see in the UK, these incredibly long trees, these hickory trees. And so the view from the studio window was just all these stripes. And it just makes you make everything much longer. So everything was getting longer and longer and longer and longer. So
so attenuated.
Yeah, but it's
Well, the effect is wonderful.
But if you look closer, you can see that it is like sticking. It is like sewing on. It's like a stitch.
Yes, I was
each one.
wondering what those dots were actually.
And that is an acknowledgement to the length of time that it takes to, like embroidery or making lace or all of those things that are very slow and meditative and like slowing of time and the beauty of it. So I hope that explains it a little bit.
You feel it when you look at them.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Well, letterpress, what is that?
It's hand set. I mean, what's beautiful, the poem, it's I'm very glad that I now can remember what the type was. It's a typeface called Granby Light. It's an old English typeface. So each letter has been set by hand, printed by hand on an old Albion hand press. And the poem, the poem is to die for, I think. I think I love it. I love collaboration with people as well. So, yeah. And it sits with the work, I think. I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions before we move on to Emma?
How does the book function? Like, does it go into like a...
This opens out. It's like a book can be anything. A book can be anything you want it to be, and it can turn like a page, or it can just be laid out. It can be anything you choose it to be. So this has got a little cover, and they just slot in, and you just pull them out. So the idea behind this one is that you could frame it, because sometimes you do a book and they're 17 feet long, and people always wonder what you can do with them, and it just seemed like a rather nice idea just to make like a small folio, in a sense. So it is a book, but it isn't a book. It doesn't have to turn like a page, and I never stitch books anyway. I only ever do concertinas, or unbindable books.